Welcome back to the lab. Right, secret project's all sorted out. It's done, it's out of the way. Workshop's had a bit of a clean up. We're back onto the mighty 300ZX Z32 with a VG30DETT in there. And we're gonna have a look at finishing reassembling that. So a few critical things going on here. A clean workshop for a start. We've got some parts cleaner, paper towel. We're gonna clean all these surfaces on the cylinder heads. Not sure if it shows on the video very well. A lot of oil has leaked out of followers all over the head surface. It's not going to seal very well if you do that. Leave it like that and put it back together. Replace the oil jets that go in the cylinder head surface on the block. I asked the engine reconditioners while they were decking the block. I got them to clean out the oil galleries and all that sort of carry on. I said, to drill these out for us, make sure the oil galleries are nice and clean, and they did drill those out, and they didn't replace them. I kind of thought they probably would as part of that, but hey, bit of a misunderstanding there. So that's fine, that's no problem. These front two, piece of cake, they just went in exactly as they should do. These rear two, they didn't drill the entire jet out. These ones are actually a check valve, so they have a very thin case around them. And what's happened is they've drilled the top. That's come away and then, oh yeah, no, we're good. And they've left the case, the bottom of the case, still in the block. And of course then I've assembled it to here, waiting for our check valves to turn up. And the check valves are turned up, going to fit them in there. They won't fit. So I've had to tip block upside down, attach a magnet to my drill so that we don't get any swarf into the oil galleries, and drill out what was left of those check valves, and then suck away at this with vacuum cleaner and all that sort of carry on, and run a magnet on the end of a bit of welding wire and poke it all around, make sure we don't contaminate our clean oil system. So that's a little bit frustrating, but hey, whatever. If that's the worst they did wrong, it's no biggie. Same deal here. Clean all these surfaces, clean, nice and clean, no oil like we've got at the moment. And then we'll be putting our lovely Cometic head gaskets on there. Some people don't like these, but whatever. That's what we're running. That's what I did run in the car in the past and had no problems. It did have factory head gaskets in the previous failure. I won't call it a build, I'll call it a failure from now on. And clearly they didn't last. They didn't last because they weren't torqued down correctly, as you will have seen in the previous video. So I'm going to clean all these up, put these on, smash those on top, and then we'll start putting our ARP L19 head studs in all the holes, and then we'll actually torque them up. We'll torque them up correctly, 125 foot-pounds I believe it is, but I'll RTFM before I do that, read the swear word manual, and we'll know. Pretty sure it's 125 foot-pounds, but let's look it up anyway. There we go, that's the last time you're going to see those, hopefully. Everything's all clean, spick and span. Those are quite thick head gaskets, because I know the heads have had at least 3, maybe 4 skims, probably more than that. So we have put 75 thou gaskets on there to bring the compression back somewhere in the realms of where it actually should be. Potentially a little bit lower, but that's fine. We're going to run decent power. We don't really have decent fuel as such in New Zealand, so a little bit lower compression won't hurt it. Okay, I'm going to pick those up and throw them onto that from 100 feet away at great speed, see if it works. Easy peasy. There's no studs or anything in there at the moment. It is just sitting purely on the dowels. What you can do, especially if you're doing studs and everything, you're going to be mucking around tightening things up for some time. If you're worried about a head falling off and crashing to the ground and ruining your day, just drop the inlet manifold on there. I was going to call it plenum, it's not, that's the manifold. Drop that on there. These studs will stop it. It can't fall off. It's literally located by the angles on each side. You're not going to pull both heads off and flip it all the way off the side, just won't happen. Of course, as long as you've got your pin, there's supposed to be a pin in there, it didn't fit very well. Oh, shouldn't show that, brain. So it's got a bolt in there instead. Yeah, you don't want to tip that onto its side, then you will drop heads and you'll have a bad day. So we're going to get our ARP L19 head studs out from their box, clean them all up, get them ready to go into their appropriate spots. There are 2 studs that are different lengths to the other studs on these engines, and I didn't check that before I put those heads on there, so I'll just look it up. I won't rely on my memory. I have seen people crack cylinder blocks trying to put the wrong bolts, not the studs, the wrong bolts into the wrong places. I think it's one of these ones down here is a shorter stud, I can't remember, and if you try and screw the bolt in and do it up to whatever the 90 foot-pounds or whatever the factory torque is, you will crack the block, and then again you have a bad day. We were doing so well. So I got that head on, the nuts on, that's fine. This head was on, started putting in all the studs. That stud hole there, there's something wrong with that stud hole. It's not happy. Here's a couple of studs. Let's put that around the right way so it doesn't confuse everyone. They're the same length, right? So we come over here, we'll screw that into there. And it doesn't go in as far as it should do. Comes to a stop. That's pretty tight there. I can't turn that any harder. If we force it, it just binds up even further. So it's not the actual stud. You can already see this one's actually, it's already gone in further. Further. No problems at all. Look at the difference in length between those two. Clearly that's not going in as far as it should do into that hole. This is the short hole. This is the one where the short stud goes. You can see that because the thread's right up near the top. In comparison to the others, the thread's quite a lot further. So that's where the short stud goes, not there. There's something wrong with this bolt hole, stud hole. So thread's damaged in some way, shape or form, which is a great time to find that now. Wish I'd found that earlier, never noticed it when I took it apart. Another stuff up on their behalf. By the time these were torqued up, the nut must have been down to the last 2 or 3 threads and just hanging in there. It's not the head gasket that was leaking, it was the left hand side that was leaking. So, well, that I know of anyway. I don't think it would have held on long term. So I'll just run a tap through here and see where we're at, figure out what's going on, see if that'll tidy it up. Fixed. Fixed. Camera work's not fixed. We don't need to know the number, but it's like 93 or something like that. And it's the same height on this one. Oh, camera work. Not very good today, Glenn. There you go. Same. That's that resolved. Now we can put the cylinder head on. RTFM. Read the frickin', we'll say, manual. It's not 125 foot-pounds for those. It's 110 foot-pounds. So just as well I checked. It might be 125 on the VG30DETT or something. I'm not sure where I got that from, but that just case in point, right? Don't rely on your memory. Always read the manual. In the aircraft industry, we always had to update manuals all the time. And you weren't allowed to have your own personal copies stashed away somewhere because those were deemed uncontrolled. So when an update came through, it wouldn't necessarily get updated, and it could be something important. So, RTFM. And we'll use a torque wrench. We'll just use that to stop bits of paper blowing away. We won't torque these up. We'll just torque those up with. Yeah. We'll put some adapters on this. That's enough torque for this, eh? Seems to be that's what other fellas did, but never mind. So I'll get those all torqued up in the correct sequence. You basically go up in stages like 13, whatever, 60, 110, and then you undo them all in the right sequence, and then you do them all up again. Is the deal with those head gaskets. So I'll get those torqued up. You're not going to watch me doing that. You'll have to just trust me that it's happened. It just never ends. You might remember I said I'll talk all these up when the heads are down. So this is a giveaway, right? So I was going through and I was doing all that. Round and round she goes. This one wouldn't talk up. Oh dear, we haven't got very focus on that, have we? But that there's aluminium. So that one's stripped. Not my doing. It would have been stripped or damaged before. It could be just because it's been in and out so many times, right? So anyway, helicoil into that puppy to fix that. All the others are all okay. It was just the one. So never mind. Lucky it's just a common thread. It's just 6x1. So that's all good. I do have helicoils for that. Almost 7 o'clock now. So we've run out of today. Today's done and dusted. You can not see in there. We need one of those. You can see when you've got your cylinder head gaskets at around about where they need to be, because all your inlet ports will line up properly. This will come down a little bit when we install the hardware and torque it up. If you're concerned about the thickness of the head gaskets that I've used, bear in mind that there's supposed to be an engine serial number on here. There's been so much removed from the block decks that is completely gone. I think the standard thickness is something like 40 thou. We're at 75. 40 thou is about 1 millimeter. Thereabouts. I could measure the ones that I've got. So we're back to what we should have as far as the, well, very close to, as far as the actual height of the combustion chambers in relation to the pistons and all that sort of carry on. So that's why we've used those. All right, I'll throw something over that to protect that from dust overnight. Tomorrow we open up a few boxes of goodies and we'll start putting things like the oil pump on. I'll tidy up the snout on the crankshaft a bit before we do that. It's a little bit scummy. We've got brand new bypass fittings and some BDE intake cam gears and bits and bobs. There's a DETT sensor to go in here before we torque this down, and there's a couple of bolts, one on each end of the cylinder head. You need to fit those as well, otherwise you'll get a bit of an oil leak in this general area. That one you can put on afterwards, it's not so bad. This one on this side, if you forget to do this one and you put all your camshaft covers, cam belt covers on, that's a pain in the brain, so you need to remember those. Cool, time for dinner. Good to see the gremlins didn't do anything nasty to this beastie last night. No dust sitting on top of that, so that's good. We're going to flip this upside down in a minute and deal with a couple of things on the bottom that we need to sort. But first thing, that's running a little bit slow. It's a little bit later than that. First thing in the morning, we'll do an unboxing. Now this has already been opened, so you don't get to see the knife come out and cut things. Got some stuff and things. An oil pump. We should open that. I'll pause. I'll get a knife in a minute. We've got a lot of paper. Lots of... We'll just leave that lying there. Make a mess of the workshop, shall we? We've got a new timing belt. Now this timing belt is a Gates, obviously. It's a high performance one. This costs less than the generic aftermarket standard timing belt that went into the original failure of a build, that was billed out to the poor customer at $386. You can buy the OEM, the genuine Nissan timing belt from our mates here at Z1 Motorsports. I think they're something like $45 US. So to be charging the poor customer 386 New Zealand dollars for an aftermarket one is not on. That's actual just robbery. Rape is probably a correct word to use for that. Brand new tensioner assembly, since they broke the other one. I'm not sure whether it was a new one or not, but it's certainly difficult to install it with the tensioner being broken. Main bearing studs, bypass hoses and fittings, these ones that go on here, they rust out and corrode. They're not very expensive. Just put new ones on. They get a real hard time because of the similar metal corrosions going on. So we've got those, and we've got some bigger injectorizers. Was the right way up. Nom nom nom. More fuel. Not that we want to be using more fuel at the moment. $3. Oh, depends where you are in New Zealand, but call it $3.50 a litre for 98. We always make sure that the boys haven't put something special in here for us. Seen that before. Not today. Not today. It's been a throw that. That's workshop was tidy. It's not now. Never mind. We've had present. There's our knife. That's not a knife. Says everyone imitating Crocodile Dundee. We've had presents before from the boys at Z1. Things have turned up, and it's been little extra special thingies in there for us, which is always appreciated. And they do sponsor the little Miss March that you all love. Oh, hang on. There we go. I'll put that up on that bench, because that bench is nice and clean. Look at that, see? Brand spanking new. Yeah, still sealed. Far better than mucking around with second-hand ones. 180 something US dollars, brand spanking new oil pump. Just why would you muck around with second-hand junk, especially when you're charging your customer $23,000 for an engine rebuild, and you put a second-hand oil pump in it. Oh, sorry, using the camera as a hand. There we go. There's our new tensioner. Now the original tensioner that was in that engine, they busted the little tab off it, which allows you to set the correct tension, and they had the tension set incorrectly, and it was only a matter of time. I'm not going to take that right out, but you can see this little tab here with the bolt. You use that to set up the tension on the tensioner correctly. They'd snapped that whole piece off. They tried to wind the bolt or whatever, and it was busted off. So you can't set the cam belt tension correctly unless you're clever, and they weren't clever without that piece there. So enough of that one-handed camera driving antics. You want to see those. You want to see those. These are a nice bit of kit. I was going to say I will get on with building things, but these are quite nice, so we'll show you those. Brett does a good job. The only time I've had problems with these was with an engine that decided to throw shrapnel into these because it was a problem child. One of those jobs that just continuously caused drama after drama after drama, and it managed to deposit some swarf, etc. inside these cam gears despite having been cleaned out to the best of our abilities. And just like the factory gears, if you get metal and stuff inside these, they will bind up and they will stop working correctly. Not through a fault of the gear, but that's just how things work. Look at that. It's nice, isn't it? Very nice and tidy. Sadly, you don't get to see these once they're in the car, once they're installed, unless you get the smoked or clear timing belt covers that you can buy, just the top halves. that everyone said would perish and crack and fall to bits and all that, and so far I've never seen any evidence of that. There's a couple of cars in New Zealand that have got those on. Right, better get on with it. It's coming together at 1,000,000 miles an hour, it's all good. Now this bit's interesting. This is the oil pickup tube, assembly straw, suction, devicey thingy. This is not the original one to the car, and I know that because I modified the original one to the car. I put a slight cutout, I guess you'd call it, just on one side of the lower pickup here, because these cars are notorious for hitting the sump on the ground or something, an object on the road, and they will literally push up hard against this and completely restrict oil flow to virtually nothing, and that'll ruin the engine. So, I mean, hey, that might be what happened to this one. Ultimately, it shouldn't be, because I put a little notch out of the side of it to stop that from happening. Even if you smack the sump hard up against this pickup, it's still going to be able to retrieve some oil from the side with the cutout on it. Yes, you're going to need, whatever it is, it depends how big your cutout is, another 5 mils of oil in the sump before you could potentially starve the engine of oil if you run it completely out. But I think that's less of a risk than the sump hitting the ground and blocking that pickup of, which I have seen several times. And they couldn't even be bothered cleaning it properly. This stuff actually does come off. It comes off with my fingernail. It comes off if you try and clean that. Why wouldn't you clean that? $23,000 job. Put some bloody degreaser in a bucket or something and clean it. So incredibly difficult. So it's clean now, except for that tab's not the best. I will give that a little bit more of a scratch up. A little bit more of a clean. And the inside's clean too. Not that we can see in the inside. Very difficult with the camera, but now we know there's not a piece of scum sitting inside here somewhere holding on to copious quantities of casting sand or bearing metal or rubbish, rocks, dogs, cats, small children, whatever. There's no crud inside here. There was enough of it on the outside. There could have been quite a lot more on the inside. Now we know we're good. I need to clean that up a little bit more. I'm going to have a drink first, but then that goes on there. We'll just, I mean, you just put it on like that and drive a Tex screw through there, don't you? That's the standard that we've seen previously on this build, so I think we'll do that. Mint. So that's that bolted onto there. There's 2 attachment points. As you saw, there's that little tab there. It's got a bolt that goes into the main girdle there. And there's another one in here. So that's located 100% correctly. Clever people have figured out there's something I want to show you here. So remember I said that the bottom of the sump can get damaged and it can push up against the oil pickup and block it off. There's some marks on the inside here which look a little bit square. And that's a little bit square. And as you can see, this area here, this is not as shiny as the rest of it. This is 2-pot, I think it might be Caprethane actually. I painted all this after I did all the modifications to it, or it could be 2K, I can't remember. This is looking a bit matte-ish, not as shiny. And as you can see, there's very clearly some big gouges on there, as if the sump has hit the ground, and it definitely has hit the ground here. Quite a big impact there as well. Something has had to go at this sump. So before you put your sump onto your freshly rebuilt engine, reassembled, repaired, whatever we're going to call it, before you put any sealant on it, you always test the fit. And that's rocking and rolling. It's not sitting down 100%. Can you see that? It might be difficult to see it. Can you see the air underneath there? That oil pickup is hitting the bottom of the sump. So that would have been like that. I didn't notice it. Obviously, it's very, very hard to tell. That would have been like that when I took this apart. And what happens when it's like that is it restricts the flow through the oil pump. You still get reasonable pressure, but you don't get the flow that you should have to cool everything down. So this engine was on a road to a hiding, what do they say, the gift that keeps on giving. Starting to look like a motor. All pretty until you turn it around and the blue belt goes all shades of dirt and stuff that gets ingrained into the surface on it. So you can see why I left these camshaft covers off. You need to be able to hold those to torque up the bolts and stuff. These ones not so bad. These ones are 90 foot-pounds. So yeah, you'll struggle to hold those without, I'm going to put a spanner onto there. There are ways to do it, but certainly if you're assembling an engine, you leave it far enough apart to get the spanner on there and do it properly. Just preparing stuff and things to close in the front of the engine here, and noticed yet another failure. You can see the seal on the thermostat there has fallen apart. Who knows where that went? Somewhere inside the motor, potentially, or whatever. This is the thermostat that I put in the car. It's a low temp one. It says on here somewhere. There it is. 62 degrees C. So that's not been replaced. $23,000 engine rebuild with the original thermostat in there. Cool. Alright, whatever. For the owner's use now, what she intends to do with it, we don't actually need a low temp thermostat in there, so I'll just get a standard off the shelf Nissan one. Will suit her needs better anyway. Absolutely starting to look like an engine at last. Fuel rails are just sitting there just to plug the holes, as is the masking tape. The next thing we need to do is put these trims on here, these covers that run in between the cam covers. Something that the guys that built the engine previously had a great deal of difficulty achieving. So obviously perhaps the person that did it was somebody that was a mechanic because they enjoyed being a mechanic and not because they're good at being a mechanic. It's pretty clear that there's two different lengths, and it's pretty clear on the engine this side's longer than that side. So I'm not sure why they decided that the longer one needed to be placed on the engine upside down on the wrong side with the plastic hanging out the back of the engine like that. They also broke it because it sits on top of this bolt because it's in the wrong spot. So, I mean, unfortunately Nissan designed it so those bolt holes do line up if you've got an idiot working on the engine who can't figure out that the square peg goes in the square hole and the round peg goes in the round hole. Says Glenn, who puts it on back to front. So, I mean, that's not that difficult, is it? That fits properly now. And then this one goes on there like that. And there's no plastic hanging out the back of the motor. Fancy that. On that bombshell, I guess you'd call it, I'm going to put these bolts in here and not over torque them like they had, and that will do for tonight. Throw a cover on it and we'll carry on with it tomorrow. I'll change the injectors and fit those permanently. These are, I think they're like 650s or something, or maybe a bit smaller, and we've got 750s for it, so that should be more better if we need more fuel. I believe those were pretty much maxed out at the time I had the car. They were running out of mojo, so we need more bigger, more better. Nearly 5 o'clock. Have a good night. Cheers, bye.